This summer, my parents sent me to Green Meadows camp. Not for fun or enrichment, but to keep me away from my new boyfriend, John. My parents didn't even have the decency to drive me. They shipped me off on a bus, which chugged along a treacherous dirt road 20 miles into the forest. As soon as we pulled up, I knew I was going to have a bad time. There were 5 dingy-looking cabins, a main building, and a bunch of dorky-looking counselors. "Welcome to Green Meadows Camp," one of the counselors called, waving at me. Looking at her made me want to puke. She had a shit-eating grin plastered on her face, and wore her blonde hair in a perfect half-updo that reminded me of Sandy from Grease. The literal incarnation of squeaky clean. To add the cherry on top, she wore a neon pink t-shirt that read, "Learning is fun." We'd been here 10 seconds, and I was already done. "Are you Janelle?" she asked, her grin never faltering. I nodded. "Great, I'm Jamie, and I'll be your counselor in cabin number 2. Can I help you with your bags?" I guess. I followed her to the cabin, but before I entered, she stopped me. "We have a strict no-phone policy. Please turn over your cell phone, laptop, smartwatch, and all other electronic devices now." "What?" "Don't worry. We'll keep them safe in our office, and we have a payphone down at main camp," she said, pointing to the decrepit building about 50 yards away. "Campers are allowed to use it on Sunday evenings only, 6 to 9, or any time for emergencies." You can't be serious. "It's a necessary rule to foster community, growth, and achievement," she said, unblinking. "I will open your bag now and remove all your electronics." I wanted to punch her in the face. Instead, I watched powerlessly as she removed my phone and laptop from my bag. She rummaged through it for a minute more, then handed it back to me. I gave her a dirty look, then headed inside. It looked worse on the inside, which I didn't think was possible. A one-room deal with a tiny offshoot for a bathroom, 3 bunk beds on each side, room for 12 girls. I only counted 8 girls total, however, including myself. I chose the last bunk on the left. My worst fear is rolling out of bed and cracking my skull open, so I had to be on the bottom bunk. And the top bunk seemed to be unclaimed, which avoided my second worst fear, getting crushed while I sleep. This place fucking sucks. I looked up to see a sort of emo-looking girl sitting in the bunk next to mine. Her blue eyes were ringed with heavy eyeliner, and her black hair was so dark it must have been dyed. I smiled at her. I know. Like, seriously, this place is a fucking shit. Now, girls, no swearing." Jamie popped her head around the corner, still smiling. "Swearing impedes our ability to enjoy nature and make new friends." "I don't know how I'm going to survive an entire month," I whispered when she walked away. "Same. I'm Janelle, by the way. Amy." As we talked, I learned more about Amy. She was 16 years old, like me, and lived outside Detroit. She was also forced here by her parents, not because of a boyfriend, but because they found her engaging in self-harm. Apparently, their solution was to ship her off to camp, which seemed pretty shitty to me. As much as I complained about my parents, she seemed to have it worse. But as we joked and laughed, I started to feel hopeful. Maybe, as bad as this camp was, I'd at least have a friend. Maybe, as we talked about our parents and cute guys and everything else, the time would just fly by. Maybe it would all be okay. I had no idea how wrong I was. Later that evening, we decided to explore the campgrounds. The counselors gave us free time to get to know each other until lights out at 10. There was no way Amy and I were going to stay holed up in that stinky cabin, so we took a walk. The sun had sunk below the trees, and dusk was settling in the woods. The moon had risen, nearly full and deep amber. We continued down the dirt road, the same way the bus had come in. Now it was completely empty, completely silent. It struck me as weird that there weren't any other vehicles in sight. How did the counselors get here? Didn't they need a car to get supplies in town or something? Maybe there was a hidden parking lot somewhere. We continued down the dirt road, gently curving around a hill. And then, suddenly, Amy grabbed my arm. "Look," she whispered in my ear. I looked up. A 10-foot-tall chain-link fence stood in front of us. It cut through the grass as far as the eye could see, curving inwards to surround the camp. The gate was locked with a chain and a heavy steel padlock. I didn't notice that before," I stuttered. "Neither did I." I swallowed. They don't want us to leave. Or maybe it's there to keep something out. I turned to her. "Huh? All kinds of things out there. Bears, cougars, wolves, maybe even a serial killer." She shrugged, then turned on her heel and started back towards the cabins. I stared at the black metal, crisscrossing up into the sky. A horrible feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. Serial killers? I didn't sleep well that night. I had nightmares, many of them, about a serial killer standing outside the fence, watching us with a demented grin, then pulling out an axe, hacking through the metal, and slipping inside. The murders would be easy for him. The camp inside the fence wasn't that big. It'd be like shooting fish in a barrel. 6 a.m. came all too soon. "Rise and shine," shouted a chipper voice. My eyes flew open, and for a second, I expected to see my own ceiling. The glow-in-the-dark stars I'd had up there since I was a kid. The old record player and the stacks of vinyl. Instead, all I saw was the rusty metal grid that held up the top bunk bed. "Ah," I groaned, rolling over and snuggling into my pillow. Not 2 minutes later, a hand tugged on my arm. "Rise and shine, Janelle," the voice said with enthusiasm. "We have an exciting day ahead of us." "Fuck you," I muttered into the pillow. "What was that?" "Nothing." I forced myself out of bed, but it was like slogging through honey. I got dressed and shuffled like a zombie to the middle of the room. The other girls were standing there, looking just as disheveled and groggy as I was. "We have an exciting day ahead of us," Jamie said, clapping her hands. "A hike this morning and art class this afternoon. But first, breakfast!" She led us through the forest to the main camp. 2 counselors stood by the entrance, both male, and they waved and smiled at us with the same enthusiasm as Jamie. The cafeteria itself was plain. The only decorations on the stark white walls were photos from previous years of summer camps. Teenagers standing next to their counselors, smiling widely. They looked a lot happier than I was. I grabbed a bowl of gray mush that was supposed to be oatmeal. Amy made herself a plate of mushy scrambled eggs. We sat at a table near the back, near the window. "This sucks," she said, poking at her eggs. "I know." "You know what I think?" she asked, lowering her voice to a whisper. "This is some kind of juvie center dressed up to seem like a summer camp. I was talking to a few of the other girls, and it seems like everyone here was in some shit before coming here." "Like what?" "Eleanor over there," she said, pointing to a tan girl with a French braid. "Wrecked her dad's car. A parajita ran away from home. I was cutting, and you were f***ing that older guy. It didn't occur to me last night, but that's why there's a fence around the damn place. This is like some sort of messed up rehabilitation center for teenagers who get into shit. My heart plummeted. My parents sent me to a rehab center? That was low, even for them. But I couldn't deny it. It made perfect sense. We finished up breakfast, although my bowl looked just as full as when I'd started. I wasn't hungry. Then we shuffled off for our hike. The hike was the most boring thing ever. We didn't really go anywhere because we couldn't. Because a 10-foot-tall fence was locking us inside. We just made a big loop around all the cabins, and then made our way down the dirt path to the other side of main camp. "Look, campers! There's a robin!" Jamie said cheerfully. Like we'd never seen robins before. "Look at the sap on this bark! This is what maple syrup is made of." Boring. The only excitement came when one of the other girls, a lanky one by the name of Ava, got her sleeve caught in a thorny patch of wild raspberries. "Oh dear," Jamie said, rushing over to her. "Don't worry, I'll get you out in no time." Except, it wasn't no time. Jamie slowly tried to extract her, but her shirt was caught by several thorns, and Ava couldn't move freely without scratching herself. And as the other girls looked on with curiosity and amusement, I saw my chance. I crept away from the group. When I hit the dirt road, I broke into a run. And then I saw it, the payphone, mounted on the side of main camp, glimmering in the sunlight like the Holy Grail. I had no idea how much a call cost. I'd never even used a payphone before. But I guessed and put 2 quarters in the slot. They rolled and clinked deep into the machine. I picked up the receiver. It was heavy. Holding it to my ear, I dialed my boyfriend's number. Then I waited for it to ring. It didn't. Instead, after several long seconds, a recording played in my ear. "Your call could not be completed as dialed. Please hang up and try again." I pressed the hang-up button thingy a few times, put in another quarter, then redialed the number. "Your call could not be completed as dialed. Please hang up and try again." What the? I pressed the button, put in another quarter, dialed again. "Your call could not be completed." Click, 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 clack. "Your call could not be completed." I broke out in a cold sweat. My heart pounded in my chest. Maybe they only turn it on Sunday evenings to stop us from breaking the rules. But she said we could use it for emergencies, didn't she? Then it should work all the time. I backed away from the phone, my heart pounding in my ears, because there was only one explanation that truly made sense. They don't want us to have contact with the outside world. They don't want us calling for help. "What are you doing?" I whipped around. A counselor stood behind me. A tall brunette woman, wearing the classic Green Meadows grin. I hung the phone up. Sorry. I didn't feel so good, so I wanted to call my mom." "Your mom can't help you." "What?" "I meant," she said in her chipper tone, "we have a nurse for that. Anytime you feel sick, whether it's a tummy ache or a scraped knee, Nurse Rebecca will get you feeling all better." "No, that's okay. I'm feeling a lot better." "No, please. I insist." Then she grabbed my arm and began pulling me towards the double glass doors of main camp. I wanted to resist her, but Honestly, these counselors were starting to scare me. Remember, you can't call for help, said a little voice in my head. Better to just play along. The nurse's office was a dingy little room halfway down the main hallway. When we entered, a young woman dressed in white nurse's garb stood to greet us. "Hello, I'm Nurse Rebecca," she said, smiling with perfect, pearly white teeth. "What's your name?" "Janelle," I said, uncertain. "So, how can I help you today, Janelle?" I glanced back at the counselor. She was standing behind me, smiling. I just had a stomachache, that's all. "Oh dear, that's no fun," she said with an overly exaggerated pout. Then she riffled through some drawers, pulled out a white pill bottle, and shook one out into her palm. "Why don't you take this? You'll feel much better." "No, thank you. I feel much better now." "It's important you feel your tip-top best here at Green Meadows," the nurse continued. "I'd really feel much better if you took it." I shook my head vehemently. "It's just Dramamine. For nausea." "No, I have a lot of allergies." And then it happened. The nurse's eyes quickly left mine and looked over my shoulder at the counselor who brought me in. Then she tilted her head ever so slightly, as if nodding at the counselor. It all happened so quickly, this secret signal, that Nurse Rebecca probably thought I didn't catch it. But I did. "Okay then," Nurse Rebecca finally said with a puttering little sigh. "If you're sure." "I'm sure." As I turned around and walked out of the office, I couldn't miss all the tools hanging on the wall. Rows of shining metal instruments. Scalpels, forceps, scissors with blades the length of my head. Instruments that would look more at home in a surgeon's suite than a nurse's office. I told Amy everything. Whispered it over lunch so the counselors wouldn't hear. She listened to me with eyes as wide as saucers. "We need to get the fuck out of here," I said when I'd finished. "What about the fence?" "Maybe it has a weak point. We should walk around the entire length one day, when the counselors aren't looking." "Oh, or we could dig under it," she said, her eyes lighting up. "We don't have a shovel. We might not need one if the dirt is loose enough." "Huh?" "My dad made me work for his landscaping business one summer. Sometimes it took me an hour to dig a hole for a tree. Sometimes 10 minutes. It depended on how, sandy the soil was. It's unlikely, but possible, that we could dig under it with our bare hands. But then, after that, 20 miles to the nearest town," I said, chewing my lip. "Do you think we could do it?" "Yeah, that's only 5 hours of walking." A loud clapping sound. "All right, time for art class," Jamie called through the cafeteria. Slowly, everyone bussed their plates, stood up, and followed her out of the cafeteria. The class was held in a large, nondescript room attached to the main hallway. Easels with canvases were arranged in a circle, and a little box of paints and brushes sat on the floor next to each stool. I took my seat next to Amy. A male counselor walked in. He looked nothing like Jamie. Not the same race, gender, hair color, and yet he resembled her because he wore that same shit-eating grin. "Welcome! I'm Hudson, your art instructor here at Green Meadows. I know you're all at different levels, so today we're going to paint something abstract and not worry about the technical details. Just pick up the brush and do what your heart tells you." "I hate abstract art," Amy muttered to me. "No talking, please," Hudson announced. "It interrupts the artistic process." We unpacked our paints and started. I picked up a white brush and dipped it in the purple, then streaked it across the canvas. I'd never liked drawing, but I had to admit, there was something cathartic about that. The counselor put on some music, instrumental, with violins that climbed to high, screeching notes, and a somber bass in minor key. The music was distracting at first, but then I found myself painting along to it. My hand moved in fluid, fast curves to the tempo. I dipped the brush in black and carved out a bold, curved line across the center. Something came over me, a rush of emotion. The music's tempo picked up, and I dipped my brush in red, smeared it across the canvas. My fingers dexterously pivoted, adding blots of color, pits of shadow. The tempo picked up again, and my hand moved faster across the canvas, and faster and faster. Whoa, that's sick. I turned to Amy. She was staring at my canvas, a grin on her face. I looked back at my painting, and my heart stopped. It was an abstract painting, of reds, purples, blacks. But my brain immediately caught how all the different shapes fitted together. Like looking at a Rorschach test, I could see something among the chaos. Me, doubled over in a twisted pose of pain, my curly black hair flying out behind me, my mouth stretched wide open in a silent scream, drowning in a pool of my own blood. The violin screeched in my ears. I jumped off the stool and ran out of the room. I heard the counselor calling my name behind me, but I didn't care. I ran into the bathroom, slumped against the wall, and began to cry. We need to get out of here. I hadn't painted that on purpose. It just happened. It was like all my panic and misery about being trapped here bled out on the page without me realizing it. Or a horrible thought occurred to me. What if it was an omen, predicting my own death? What if, at some point during my stay, Nurse Rebecca was going to flay me open with those scissors? We need to get out of here. Sniffling, I grabbed paper towels out of the dispenser and blew my nose, wiped my face. Sighing, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Deep bags lay under my eyes, and my usually warm brown skin was ashy, pale. The bathroom door swung open. Jamie stepped in, wearing her never-failing smile. Hi, Janelle, she said cheerfully. Are you enjoying art class? Yeah. Hudson said you ran out of class. Are you okay? I'm worried about you. But she didn't sound worried. In fact, she was still grinning from ear to ear, still talking in that chipper, almost robotic voice. Didn't she see that my eyes were all red from crying? Why wasn't she wrapping an arm around me, telling me it was going to be okay? This was the best she could do? Just standing there, grinning at me? I'm fine, I said, starting for the door. But then, she grabbed my arm. It's important that you enjoy it here, she said, still grinning as she gripped my arm tight. Very important. Hey, let go of me. I twisted my arm out of her grasp and ran out of the bathroom. She didn't follow. Shaking, I ran back to cabin 2, where I hugged the pillows and cried. I must have fallen asleep at some point, because by the time I got out of bed, it was dark and I was 10 minutes late for dinner. I threw on my shoes and ran down to the cafeteria, fearing if I didn't show, there would be punishment. The line for food was long. I waited, my feet growing sore as I stood there. I saw Amy was already seated at the far end of the cafeteria with food. I was surrounded by strangers. Girls like me talking amongst themselves. Although, they didn't seem so troubled. They seemed fine. Happy, even. I wonder if they came here voluntarily. Maybe this wasn't some sort of rehab after all. Maybe it really was a summer camp. And Amy and I, and a few others, like the girl who totaled her dad's car and the girl who ran away, were the lonely few who had been sent here as punishment. I glanced up at one of the photos on the wall. The faded writing read, "Green Meadows Camp, 1992. Even the campers then looked happy, smiling broadly as they stood next to their counselors. And I couldn't help but notice their dated outfits. Too much denim, layered haircuts, even one girl wearing a baseball cap on backwards. I began to snicker, and stopped dead. There, the third counselor from the left. Perfect blonde hair, a shit-eating grin, supernaturally white teeth. It was Jamie. Jamie, looking exactly the same as she did today. "Hey, if you don't move, I'm gonna cut you in line." I turned around to see a grumpy redheaded girl glaring up at me. "Oh, sorry." My hands were shaking by the time I reached the buffet. I mindlessly scooped past onto my plate, then scanned the room for Amy. Finally, I found her. She was sitting at a table near the window, slowly twirling pasta with a fork. "Amy, you're not going to believe this." "What?" "Jamie, she's in a photo from 1992. I pointed to the wall, lowering my voice. "She looks exactly the same." Her eyes widened. "What?" I guided her to the photo and showed her. "Holy shit," she whispered. "It looks just like her." "I know. But," she tapped her chin with her finger, "it is kind of blurry. Maybe it's just a girl who looks like her? Or even a mother or something? We are in the middle of bumblefuck nowhere. People stay in the same town for generations in places like this. I guess it's possible." She looked at me. I looked back at her. A sick feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. There was something horribly, horribly wrong with this camp, and I intended to escape before I found out what. Jamie herded us all into the cabin for lights out at 10. She plugged in a nightlight by the bathroom. "Good night. Tomorrow, we'll have more fun adventures." I could see Amy in the darkness on the next bed. Her eyes were wide open. "What are you thinking about?" I whispered. "Just my dog," she whispered back. "His name's Henry. He's a little beagle mix. I miss him." Her eyes locked on mine. "So, are we really going to try to escape tomorrow? Let's check the fence at least." "No talking," Jamie sing-songed from the other side of the room. My heart dropped. Is she going to hear us whispering from all the way over there? I hope she didn't hear us, I whispered as quietly as possible. Amy shrugged back. Then I rolled over and tried to fall asleep. Something woke me up with a start. My eyes fluttered open. Again, for a second, I expected to see my ceiling with the glow-in-the-dark stars. But instead, it was the harsh metal grid again, holding the mattress above me. But something was different. Something felt wrong. I squinted, trying to think through the fog of sleep. What's going on? What? I froze. The grid was bowing out towards me, as if someone were in the top bunk. My blood turned to ice. I stared at the grid, my heart hammering in my chest. Someone's up there. But no one slept up there. The bunk was empty. There were only 8 girls in the cabin. Then, something caught my eye, in my peripheral vision on the left. I slowly turned my head. Oh God, no, no, no! Jamie. Her head hung over the side of the bed, upside down, staring at me, grinning. I quickly shut my eyes, hoping, praying that it was a nightmare. But then I opened them again for a second, and she was still there, grinning at me in the darkness like some maniac, holding her head stick still, her blonde hair hanging limply in the air beneath her. No. No. I pretended to be asleep, straining my ears for the slightest sound, for the slightest creak of the mattress or the springs. For the longest time, minutes, hours, I heard nothing. Then, finally, I heard a creak above me. My eyes flew open. Her face was gone. I let out a shaking breath. I turned to Amy, but she was fast asleep, mouth hanging open, drooling on the pillow. I wanted to scream, wanted to wake her up and run for the fence. Anything. But I couldn't. Because, while Jamie wasn't watching me anymore, she was still lying on the top bunk right above me. The grid was still bowed out towards me. If I even made the slightest movement, she'd know. I closed my eyes, silently crying, wishing this was all over. Janelle, wake up! I jolted awake. My arm shot out and grabbed her. And then I realized it wasn't Jamie. Amy jumped back, narrowing her eyes at me in the darkness. Hey, what the fuck? Sorry, I glanced up at the metal grid. It was back to normal. Jamie wasn't there. Shit. How did I let myself fall asleep? Jamie could have murdered me. Jamie. I shot up and looked at her bed. Empty. Oh God, where's Jamie? I jumped out of bed and looked at the top bunk. Empty. I glanced around the cabin. No Jamie. Hey, did you hear what I said? She grabbed me by the arms, and that's when I noticed she looked scared. There's something weird going on outside. What? The counselors. I can see them in the woods. They're dancing around a big fire. She yanked on my shirt sleeve, dragging me over to the window. Outside, halfway between the cabins and main camp, was a big campfire. And even though the window was dirty, the firelight lighting up all the grime and dust, I could still make out several figures dancing around it. The counselors. We crept to the front door of the cabin. Slowly, noiselessly, pushed it open. Both of us peered out into the darkness. Without the window blurring everything, the scene was crystal clear. But I found myself wishing I hadn't seen it clearly. There was something off about how the counselors danced. Their limbs didn't move right. Knees bent backwards, heads flailed widely on necks, bodies twisted in a way that would break a normal person's spine. A sick feeling bloomed in the pit of my stomach. I grabbed Amy's wrist. "We need to get out of here," I whispered. "Look at their faces," she whispered back. And then I saw it. Each counselor was wearing an animal mask. A bird with huge, unblinking eyes. An alligator with a twisted snout and rows of sharp, yellow teeth. A woman on the left side wore the mask of a jackal, its mouth crookedly grinning, its eyes abysses of pure black. Her knees popped as they bent backwards with each step. Then she turned her head slightly, and I saw that perfect blonde hair glinting in the firelight. "It's Jamie," I whispered. We jumped back from the door in unison, but it had been our weight holding it open. Before we could stop it, the door slammed shut in our faces. Through the door's window, I could see the counselors. They'd stopped dancing, and they were staring right at us. "Run," Amy whispered. In hindsight, running was stupid. We should have just jumped back into bed and pretended we were asleep. Had they really seen which girls were staring out at them? The windows were grimy. They weren't that close to the cabin. But they call it fight or flight for a reason. And both of us instinctually went to flight. We burst out the door and ran into the woods, into the darkness behind the cabins. That's the second reason running was stupid. The fence. We were back to that scenario I thought about. Like shooting fish in a barrel. The woods between the cabin and the fence were larger than I remembered, though. Lots of darkness and shadows. Pools of pitch black to disappear in. We found a boulder about 10 yards from the fence and ducked behind it. As we crouched in the darkness, holding our breath, I could hear the footsteps echoing through the clearing. Twigs snapping, joints popping, as they moved against their design. And then Amy did something horribly stupid. She ran out from under the shadows, towards the fence. She got on her hands and knees, and she started to furiously dig. I peered over the rock. The counselors were advancing, slowly winding through the forest with a predatory gait. There was no way, as they got closer, that they wouldn't see her, wouldn't hear her. "Fuck," I whispered to myself. Then I sprinted out of the shadows and joined her. "They're gonna kill us," she sobbed. My hands joined hers, plunging into the damp earth, frantically clawing it back. Our panting breaths echoed in the silence. But I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. The gap we'd made was almost 6 inches wide now. Just a little more, and if the fence had some give to it, maybe we'd be able to... "You're not supposed to be out here." I turned around, looked up. Jamie stood there, her pitch-black jackal eyes locked on us. For once, she wasn't smiling. Amy and I screamed, but it was too late. Rough hands grabbed us by the arms and yanked us through the woods, towards cabin 2. "This is it. They're gonna kill us. This is how I die." They shoved us into the cabin. Then Jamie locked the door behind her. "You've been very bad," she said. Her voice sounded so different without its enthusiasm. Deep, dark, rattling. "I'm sorry. Please don't hurt us." "Hurt you?" Jamie let out a low, scoffing laugh. "All I've ever tried to do is help you. Like I've helped the other girls." She pointed into the darkness, towards the bunk beds. Then she reached over and flicked on the lights. All the air sucked out of my lungs. The other girls, They were lying there in their beds, in pools of blood. Eleanor's head was completely smashed in. Aparahita's torso was drenched in blood from what looked like a bullet hole to her abdomen. Ava's head was twisted all the way around. I screamed. Amy joined me, and our screams echoed through the cabin, shrill and hoarse. They killed them! My mind flashed back to the tools in the nurse's office. The forceps, the scissors, all used to kill these poor girls. Will you shut the fuck up? Aparahita was sitting up in bed, staring at us. My scream shut off. I stared at her, mouth agape. How is she alive? And then I realized the other girls were waking up too. Ava sat up, squinting in the light. Her face pointed toward me, even though her body was pointed away. Eleanor's grotesque face shifted as she scowled at us. And the others, twisted, dismembered, coated in blood, were sitting up like nothing was wrong. Amy grabbed my hand. "What?" she choked out. "I'm sorry. Usually, as we guide the campers, they accept the reality pretty early on. But you two had closed minds. You fought it, and you were going to get away," Jamie said behind us. "What?" "Look down," she said gently. I did. And then I saw that my own body was drenched in blood. I glanced over to Amy and saw several cuts going up her arm, from her wrist to her inner elbow. John, your new boyfriend, 10 years older than you. He had a wife you didn't know about. A vengeful wife. Jamie still wore the jackal mask, but I could hear the sadness in her voice. And Amy, your self-harm went a little too far. You weren't trying to die, but the cuts were too many, too deep. Amy and I stared at each other. Eleanor died in a car crash, Jamie continued. When she borrowed her dad's car to go to a party, Aparahita ran away from home, but some lowlife found her before her parents did. Tiffany was attacked by a dog, and I wasn't listening. I grabbed Amy's hand and yanked it. I ran to the door, pulling her with me, and popped the lock. "Janelle! Amy!" Jamie said. The door bounced shut behind me. Amy and I raced over the dirt, slipping on the leaves. "I'm not ready to die," Amy sobbed. "Me neither." Thumps sounded behind us, but we kept running. To that same spot we'd been digging at. I got on my hands and knees beside Amy and we clawed at the dirt. The hole widened. I glanced back. Shadows, silhouetted by the dying campfire, were growing closer. "Hurry!" I screeched, digging faster. "They're almost here." And then I felt a push. "Go!" Amy pleaded. Tears ran down her face as she pushed at my shoulders. "You're smaller than me. You'll make it through." No, I'm not leaving you. Go!" With one backwards glance, I flattened myself against the ground and pushed forward. The metal fence clawed at my hair, then at my back. The cold ground pushed into my stomach. Amy's hands were on me, pushing with all her might. I was through. I scrambled out, dragging my legs behind me. Then I turned around. The counselors weren't there yet. Close, maybe 20 feet away, but not there. "Come on!" I screamed. I pushed my arms through the hole and grabbed Amy's hands. her head pushed through. I grabbed her arms and pulled with all my might. But no, the counselors were on her now, reaching out for her. Their fingertips were inches from her. I yanked as hard as I could, and then everything went black. Beep, beep, beep. Steady beeping, rhythmic whooshing, clacking footsteps on tile. My eyes flew open. Mom? My mom's face hovered above mine, tears running down her cheeks. Oh my God, Janelle, I thought the doctor said... She wrapped her arms around me and began to sob, and I began to cry too, until I remembered. Amy? Where's Amy? Amy? My mom asked, confused. Amy Walker. Honey, are you okay? She asked, her smile fading. Do you know what year it is? What your name is? What? I'm fine. She's a friend at school. Mom's smile returned. I have to call your father. I can't. She began to sob again and dialed him. But heavy dread was sinking in my chest. Amy. I didn't save her. I was in the hospital for 3 days. John's wife had already been arrested, I found out. And after I'd been stabbed, my heart had stopped for a full minute. That's it. 1 minute. As soon as I got home, I kept Googling Amy Walker several times a day, looking for an obituary to pop up. None came. Finally, I expanded my search outside of Google. I went to Facebook, other social media outlets, looking for an Amy Walker. And then, finally, I found something. A profile with a picture of an emo-looking teen. Black hair, blue eyes. My heart leapt as I scrolled down, and I realized she'd posted yesterday. Hands flying across the keys, I typed her a message. Hi, Amy. Remember me? Hey, everybody. Hope you enjoyed today's story. This one was written by Blair Daniels. This is a story featured in the new audiobook narrated by me called Terrors of the Forest. It's got a bunch of really good stories in it, written by John Beardify, who many of you are probably familiar with from the channel. One of my favorite authors who I feature on the channel here quite a bit. Mr. Michael Squid, Kitty Olson, Blair Daniels, a story in there written by me as well. Really enjoyed the stories in this book. I think they're really, really solid stories, and if you want to pick up a copy to support my work and support the channel, check out the audiobook Terrors of the Forest on Audible, or you can find it on Amazon as well. Today's story is kind of one of those twist ending stories where you realize at the very end, or if you're like me, you realize at the very end of the story that the characters are actually dead, and the summer camp is kind of a purgatory. I think it's kind of a purgatory type of place, an afterlife sort of place, where you kind of adjust and start to realize that you're dead. Kind of a bleak place to spend eternity if this is the full afterlife. I don't think I would want to be in summer camp permanently. I went for an all-inclusive vacation last year. It was the first time I'd ever done that. And I had the feeling the whole time, like, this is like a summer camp for grown-ups. Like all the activities and going to the mess hall to eat all your meals, and I don't know, it just had that kind of vibe to me. You're sleeping in a little cabin sort of thing, and yeah, this story definitely reminded me of some good and some bad experiences at summer camp. I went to summer camp a few years as a kid. There was one year where I was very, very blessed, very fortunate. My parents sent me to like a camp where there was like horse riding and archery and things like that. Kind of a little bit reminded me of certain aspects of the story. Yeah, it has its good moments and its bad moments. I made some friends there who I never spoke to again, and we played some pranks and had some fun. But yeah, I probably wouldn't want to spend eternity in a summer camp, if you get my vibe. I think most people would probably not love that. This story, I thought it was really clever how they introduced the twist at the end. I personally did not see it coming at all. Maybe some of you guys did, but I thought it was really well done. I like the fact that the character and her friend at the end of the story kind of made it through and came back to life and ended up being alive at the end of the story, and maybe can make some better choices and can live the rest of their lives. It's kind of bleak if they ended up just being dead at the end of the story. So I liked how this one turned out and how it ended. I might do one more story from this audiobook collection, possibly in the coming days, or I may just leave it at just these two and leave the rest for people to enjoy in the audiobook. There's about 4.5 hours of horror stories in that audiobook, so some really good stuff in there. The one by John Beardify is over an hour long, so that one was really solid as well. All the stories in the book, though, are very good. I should have another story coming for you guys on Wednesday this week. And yeah, I've got some more good stuff in the works for you guys coming this summer and before Halloween, so keep an eye on the channel and turn on notifications and subscribe and all that good stuff. If you're watching on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, it really does help out a lot if you hit that follow button. So thank you for everybody who's done that. I'm also on Patreon if you want to be a citizen in the town Hollow's End in my stories about Hollow's End. You can join my Patreon page, patreon.com/Jordan Group Horror. And I got bonus content up there, some early access, and you can also be featured as a character in one of my stories that'll appear on the channel. All right, that's about all I got for today. Hope you guys have a good week, and I'll be back on Wednesday with another story. All right, have a good day.